All right, so for this video, we will continue along the benefits of being in a group. So we've covered several before, I think 4 of them. Now we will finish up the other 4 here. And the first one will be the division of labor. And in some societies, different individuals have different tasks. Up on top, you have bees. On the bottom, you have termites. And so this is seen to the extreme in caste of insects like bees, wasps, termites, and ants, and eusociality. We also see this in one of your homework assignments, which was the zoo trip and in the naked mole rat. And so we will talk about this a little bit more, eusociality, later. All right, a richer learning environment for the young. And so here we have spotted hyena, and we've talked about learning before, and in some species it's extremely important for them to learn, especially hyenas, things like this. Primates are another, we are a very social animal and learn by observation and other techniques. And so we want you to know the study Jorg, 1991, did a spotted hyena study. And what they did is they actually fed some hyenas food that was tainted with lithium chloride. And it made them feel sick. And so they would avoid it. And then afterwards, just like we talked about before, you're kind of a learning response. Once you eat something that doesn't agree with you, even if it's okay later, often you've learned now that may not be a good food to eat. And so they did that with these guys. And what happened then is after they had taught a couple of these hyenas to dislike a food and not touch it, then they introduced them to a group of other hyenas. And the other hyenas were never taught that this was a bad food, that the food was never had lithium chloride in it. And so what happened is they would eat it. And the hyenas that were trained to avoid it started watching them eat it, and nothing happened to them. So then they learned, okay, this must be okay, and then began eating it again. So they got over that aversion, which was definitely taught to some of the young hyenas. All right. Help from offspring or relatives. And this is kin selection, which we've talked before, and we're going to talk again a little bit later. And the idea is you help organisms or individuals that are related to you to help your overall indirect fitness. So I may not survive, but my genes, I share them with relatives, so they will survive, so I get this indirect fitness. And then cooperation may help. Many examples like hunting, we saw with the wild African dogs. Defense, you saw that in the video that I showed you with the water buffalo against the lions. And you really need to show that both benefit from the relationship. So there was a study done on lazuli buntings, and the males come in 3 plumages. The brightest plumage is seen there up on the top, and then you have some birds that are a bit more drab on the bottom. And the bright males have actually found that they will tolerate some of the lesser birds to nest around them because although they're competing, they know they outcompete them, and it actually gives them advantage because the more species around will help with protection, but also what you get is the ability, you are the better male of the 2 in theory, so you get to breed with their females also. And that then leads to more fitness for you. And it's funny because what happens is it's that third color that does show up in males that is kind of a loser. They don't get success from doing that. Is they're not dull enough for the bright males to allow them to be around, so they don't benefit at all from this cooperation. Delayed cooperation. Long-tailed mannequins, and we got a video of this that we want you to watch. One male gets all the matings, and then why would the other males help with the dance to attract the females? And it really comes down to what they figured out was perching. There are these great mating perches, and there's only so many of them. And so what happens is the secondary males that are helping another male breed are hoping that they will inherit the perch once the dominant male is no longer with us or too old or whatever it is. So we're cooperating today thinking that we're going to get a benefit in the future. So when do you cooperate? And that's a question that, do you cooperate more with individuals that are related to you or not? Here, vampire bats will actually feed and they will share blood with others, and they've done DNA, and it'll help us know what's going on. They actually think that that's not the case. It's not always relatives. What they're leaning toward with this study is they believe is, hey, you help me before, I will help you later. And so what seems to be happening is if you do not help me in my time of need, I'm not going to help you next time. So there is a benefit to cooperate, knowing that, hey, I've got extra food. I'm going to share a little here, hoping I get some in return. And that's called reciprocity. The idea of getting something in return. Now, it's not always even, but it does a benefit. So here up on top, primates, we see that in grooming behavior. We see that in lots of primates. And usually the dominant ones are groomed more than the lesser individuals, but it always happens, and even the dominant ones will groom some of the lesser ones. But the idea is it's helping everybody. There is, I guess, some nutrition involved. If you find something, they typically eat it. But more importantly, keeping the parasites down on everybody is going to help you because there's less parasites. And so that's reciprocity. The idea is you do me, I do you. We also see that in the pied flycatchers. They have this mobbing behavior around nests, especially to keep out predators. And most birds, again, will help their neighbors that have helped them. So there is some idea that as long as I perceive that you are going to help me, I will help you back. And then the last one here is a modification of their environment. There are a few species that have the ability to change the environment, and the larger group will help out with that. So building nests, burrow systems, dams, etc. A group can build with an individual cannot. So some of these huge beaver dams couldn't be done by a single beaver. And on the left, we have a hive. Bees and wasps and things could not build these big hives by themselves. So there is a benefit to modify the behavior. Bees will do this, one, for obviously having a place to live and to develop food and offspring, but also they use it for weathering cold weather and things like that. Actually, some of the bees will be on the outside of the hive when it's really cold, beating their wings to keep air moving across. We do that with crops. We put fans out there to keep them from freezing, and bees will do the same thing. And then the beavers will set up, they like slow moving water or kind of lakeish, pondish issues. And so they will block areas, create lodges, which can have groups of up to like 10, not huge groups, but still. But it allows them to modify their environment for their needs. And with that, we will stop the share and stop the recording.